Alright, so number 12 says, hey, these are two similar triangles, and they want to find this side. So the best I can come up with is say, okay, then they're going to say that the side of this small triangle, right? This side, right, is similar to this side. And this is the one that we were doing, that last problem that we did. It's just like that last problem that you guys saw me do when you first got here. Which is it's saying that we're going to set this up with proportions, right? We're going to say this side is to this side as this side is to that side. Or we can set it up with the ratios. So which way you want to do that? You want to say what times 4 is 22? Then that same, or what times 22 is 4? And then that same thing times 44 is going to be x. So how do you want to go about it? You want to use the ratio? Or do you want to use proportions? Proportions? Okay. So, let's look at it as the proportions of the red triangle, right? Versus the proportions of the green triangle. Okay? Okay? Now we're back to those colors, right? So, now which side's bigger? 4 or question mark? Question mark. Which side's bigger? 22 or 44? Right? Okay? So all we're saying is, this is the bigger side of the small triangle, right? So if we call this side 1 of the small, right? Side 1 of the small. Then this would be side 1 of the big. Does that make sense? If this is side 2 of the small 2, then this would be big 2. Does that make sense? So far? Okay? So then I'm going, hey, the side of the red triangle, the small side of the red is 4. Is 2. The small side of the green, 22. Right? As the big side of the red, we'll call that UF, is to the big side of the green, which is 44. Does everyone see how I got 4 is to 22 as question mark is to 44?
Where are the sides?
So this short side of the red, right, is proportionate to the short side of the big triangle, right, or the green triangle. And this longer side of the red is proportionate to the longer side of the green. Does that make sense? So far?
But how come you don't use UW or instead of using 44?
We could totally set it up as UW, UV, and UE if you want. You want me to do all the letters first?
No, don't.
Okay, because that gets a little confusing sometimes. All I did was kind of get rid of the letters except for the one that we don't know what it is. And there's no X there, so I didn't want to put a question mark. So I put UF, that's all. Right? It's just as easily question mark, right? Does that make sense?
When is the side 1? So you have it as 4. Wouldn't it be UW? Because it's the big one?
But this is of the small. UF is of the small. So this is the small side, or the red,
Yeah.
and this is the big triangle, or the green. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that better? Sorry, I'm getting confused between big triangle, green triangle, red triangle, small triangle, big side, small side. It's a little confusing. Plus I'm getting tired and hungry. I'm ready for lunch, right? Aren't we all?
Yes.
Right? So I'm trying to be understanding, but at the same time we gotta push. Gotta push it through. Okay. What now? And so this is where a lot of teachers teach what's that? Cross multiplication. I don't like cross multiplication. I like to flip it. And so, first of all, this is the definition. Sorry. This is the definition of proportions or proportional sides of the similar triangles, right? And then from there, I can do definition of ratios, meaning one ratio should equal the other ratio, which means I can flip them. Okay? Let me prove that to you. Flip, the definition of flip ratios. And so, it's really important that you understand, like when I was sitting at a test in TCC, and I'm trying to do this calculus problem, I came across a fraction, I had to multiply it, and I was like, ooh. And I came across a problem like this. And I was like, oh man, how am I gonna solve it? How am I gonna solve it? Pressure. Because this is my midterm. It's like half of my grade. If I don't answer this, there's only 3 problems on this test. If I get this one problem wrong, I'm screwed. Right? So I'm like, how can I do that? How can I do this? I couldn't think of that cross multiplication thing. All I could think of is use what I know to figure out what I don't know. And what I know is 1/2 is equal to 3/6, right? Is that true? 1/2 equals 3/6.
Yes.
Okay? So does 2/1 equal 6/3?
I suppose.
Yeah, right? And then I said, well, does that always work? 4 8s, 8 4s. It's like, okay, it always works. And I'm like, okay, cool. So what that means is I could go UF, right, over 4 should equal 44/22. And I created my own thing where I could flip both sides of the equation. Now they don't teach that. Little did I know that back then. But I teach it, I've taught it to every single class I've ever taught, ever since I started teaching. Because to me, it's way easier than cross multiplication. Because cross multiplication is a trick, it's not a method. Okay? And tricks are fine. I teach tricks all the time. It's just that, for me, once I set it up, and the reason I also teach this is when we do SOHCAHTOA next month, we're going to be doing this flip thing a lot. It just makes it easier, especially when you're talking about sine of 42 degrees over 6 is equal to, you see what I'm saying? It gets really confusing. So once I'm doing this, now it's easy. Now I just multiply, right, what's the opposite of dividing by 4? Multiply by 4, right? So those cancel. And what I'm doing is, right, SADMEP or multiplying property of equality, right? Now, does anything go into 4 and 22?
11.
No, 4 and 22. What number goes into 4 and 22?
2.
2. How many times? 2 goes into 22 11 times, 2 goes into 4 2 times. I know we're tired and hungry, but you guys got this, right? Now, what is 2 times 44?
Your dad.
88 over 11. So what is 88 divided by 11?
What?
8.
Okay? And so, all we did here
Oh wait, that's not about.
was to simplify,
Oh,
and then we got it. That was it. Is that correct? Hopefully. Yeah. Questions?
Answers.
Keep going to in the back. So once you get past 20, and you'll get to the answers. So it's not as thick as it looks.
Oh, okay.
Half of it's all answers.
Wait,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
Questions? I will stop. I just want to. Questions?
After question 20, there's all the answers.
Questions? Any questions? We good?